who are principals with Studio 7.5. They have a long history of partnering with Herman Miller on a variety of design solutions, some of which you may know, such as Cosm, Setu, Mirra, Mirra 2, and they are here today to share with you something about their design philosophy and process, and also highlight an introduction from Design Days or NeoCon in Chicago this spring. And so I don't want to steal any of their message or thunder, so I will right now turn it over to them. But I will say we are doing Q&A at the end of the session, so please use the chat field and enter any questions you may have about today's presentation, and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So Carola and Burkhart, over to you.
Thank you, Alan. So thanks for having us. Hopefully it does not turn too nerdy because we are really chair freaks. But hopefully we can share some interesting stories of the development of growing a chair. So Studio 7.5 in Berlin, we are a team and we are two of the principals. The third one has an emergency in Corsica, so he couldn't be here. But as Alan already said, we did quite many chairs so far, and you could ask yourself why we even entertain the idea to make another chair. I think the initial spark was observations that Burkhart and myself both did at university. We are also teaching product design in the universities in Berlin. And of course, we are super happy if our students are really forgetting everything, have those flow moments in working on their stuff. But we also observed that really comes at a price. So they, even at that early age, they start, because they hunch over a computer all day long, to have back problems, discs, and especially after degree work. So funny enough, we often get a call once they have their first job, asking us how to get a Mirra or how to get a Cosm. So for us, that was almost like the wake-up call. Can we design an entry-level product? Can we design something that students can afford and that is somehow a first decent ergonomic chair? And there, hence the code name for the development came from. We called it BASIC. And BASIC is really the idea of having something like a quintessential Herman Miller sit. And so really reduced to the essence, so that it is really an affordable solution that still is really true to the core principles of an ergonomic chair. And in order to understand what is so important about chairs, for us the short version is you want to forget about gravity. It's really about suspending you in midair and making it possible that you can have those flow moments. And it's a little bit like with a sneaker. You need to have support and pliability in motion. And this needs to be carefully balanced in order to create this absence of awareness and this comfort. And you need, if you really want to have the perfect comfort, you have to create really machines. These are not chairs, but sitting machines. And they are great. And if you have a long day to work at a computer or have to focus on work, this is the gold standard for an ergonomic work chair. And the essence of it is that the whole mechanism moves around your ankles. So you can almost, without understanding how it works, you have a frictionless recline motion that moves backwards, opens all angles, and balances you through a spring system that brings you up again. Of course, with a mechanism like that, it needs to be adapted to your weight, and therefore you have to do all kinds of adjustments, and it's really complicated. And if you do that automatically, like we do with Cosm, it's an even more complicated mechanism, and for sure not really affordable to make. On the other end of the spectrum, there are a lot of chairs that just rely on the material deflection, but that only benefits a certain type of user. It's either too stiff or too soft, and it's not really working for everybody. So we came up already on Setu with the idea of using a geometry, a kinematic geometry that is balancing you with your own counterweight. And that then really feels the same for different types of users, because you're always balancing yourself with your own weight. And the other beautiful thing is, if you pick the right points, so that everything rotates about the hip joint of the user, essentially, then you also have this this notion that there's no relative motion between the chair and you, and it feels really, really comfortable. And we dipped our toes already in bionic principles on the Setu chair, meaning that we only use bending instead of mechanical linkages. What is nice about it, it's fewer parts, it's not rattling, it doesn't make sound, and it's pretty simple because it's just flexing members. And we thought that would be a perfect start to look at this exploration for what is the essence of an ergonomic chair. And you can test most of those principles already in small scale models. But sitting is a full contact sport, as we say. So soon after that, we went to full scale for experiencing it. And you can read that as a timeline from the left upper corner to the right lower corner. And you can see how the contours first still looked very much Setu-like. And then we started to bend it into a shell, having these two layers, this strap that then pulls you back in space, and therefore a full shell emerged. Something like you can say it's a kinematic shell. So it does it works like a Setu chair, but as a full shell. And we thought that was so interesting that we thought, okay, we need to show that in Michigan. We are onto something, so we want to share our enthusiasm. We thought this could be an essential basic Herman Miller office chair or a desk chair. So everybody got on board, everybody was enthusiastic, but we soon knew that this can only be 3D printed. This is not a method for a production. So we went through several rounds for finding a path to feasibility, something that can really be done in an industrial process, which is the other important ingredient if you want to create something affordable. So we then went through all the rigor of fine-tuning the cross sections, fine-tuning the spring section in the back, because the whole thing is the mechanism. So we had to go through fine, subtle shapes of the contour many times. And then what we think of our profession, that we are also really into experience design. So it's not the shape, it's really the way it feels, and therefore all the motions need to be really designed carefully and also tested. So every prototype generation, then also when it came from the tool, it was everybody is test driving it in the studio and finding out whether it really feels well to sit on. And even tiny things that, like these little rubber bumpers, help to make that ride even smoother. So for us, it's really important to make that feel compelling. And experience design also means if something moves, you potentially create pinch points, and because you have relative motion, and you really have to make sure that nothing happens. Usually you use covers for that, additional parts. And in this quest for reducing components, we thought, okay, maybe there's a different way. Maybe we can create something like interlocking parts. In the first columns down there, they were still too big. But at the end, we were able to create this interlocking feature in the front that is even beautiful now, but that's preventing people from getting pinched if they accidentally touch the bottom side. And for us, that's part of the due diligence of this long development process. And that's also something where we think maybe somebody discovers that very, very late, but is still happy that even the bottom side is aesthetic. And then, of course, if you do a chair, the first question is how to do armrests. And we thought, okay, this kinematic shell will not tolerate arms because they will stiffen out the kinematic. So we thought about additional, just a bracket with arms added, but soon found out that it's really awkward. If you move backwards, not only the arm is static, but also you create really awkward pinch points. So we had to go back and did one of our really notorious silence of the lamp prototype sessions, cutting and bolting and creating a shell with integrated arms. And we found out that it worked. That was the interesting part, that we didn't understand why, but it worked. At first, we really had a hard time to really believing that it would work. But the arms are a stiff member, but the important part is that they still pull the seat portion backwards. And that is what the magic of the kinematic is doing. So sometimes the prototype is surprising us as well, and it's a learning. So then the aesthetic integration started, and when we learned that it's really this side strap that is doing the mechanical part of it, we thought it should also be part of the visual language, so that if you look at it, you can read what is happening. And we even created some polycarbonate shells to see the mechanism at work, almost like in an X-ray. So you can see that also the final armrest is really doing the same as the shell without the armrest. And of course, if it's integrated, it's much more simple, and we think the arms in the shell are really nicely refined in the end. Yeah, we do a lot of creative prototyping. So we weld. We also have to fix things and have to improvise. Here, the first shells from the tool, the bending zone, the spring didn't work right, so we had just to use a heat gun and manipulate it. Sometimes it's also really complicated to think about an elegant way to mount things and to assemble things, because that's part also of the experience. If you say it needs to be built, and hopefully it's also built in an elegant way so that it's not costing too much time and effort. And in order to see whether our mounting principle worked, we just printed a section to be able to see what is otherwise hidden. And the ambition always was to answer to all the rigorous tests from Herman Miller. So this is some shots from the test lab, what is also called the land of broken dreams. We had to go through the same testing as all other office chairs, and that was really stressful for us, but it survived. So it really worked. And also another reality check is, if you want to be affordable, you also should not waste any volume in shipping. So also that was interesting to see how we can max out the density of the package. And one of the fortunate things we felt was that we had also we were allowed to also think about a stool in the family, and this really helped us, this freedom to think about what would be a basic stool look like. And first we still thought in the regular archetype of a ring, and soon found out that this is not really working because it's emulating a steel ring. And if you really want to be clever and use the material in the right way, you need to much more think in surfaces, which then led us to what we call a foot disc. Here you see one of our lazy prototyping techniques. We just print a slide and then use two mirrors to look for the full shape of the geometry. So the foot disc now is what we think also in its way you can adjust it, is really a pleasant and delightful user experience, because you can change it with one finger. Here we had to change the dwell a little bit so that it's not falling. Finally now it's really one hand operation, and it fully works as a foot ring and has this nice side function that you might even can put a bag or a purse there if you just have things that you carry with you. So we think it's nice that it's something like a new archetype for a stool, which also now looks very civilized and iconic, we think, because it's all dipped in color. So it's not a different material, it's all in the same color, and therefore the complexity is greatly reduced. Yeah, and then there was another first for us. We always worked with membrane. So this was the first shell chair, and that also brought the question, there should be an upholstered version. That would be really nice. So we started to learn all about upholstery and think about techniques, how to upholster the shell. And yeah, we looked about monokini, bikini, full bathing suits, all kinds of cutting patterns for a textile cover. We also explored that in full scale, and it dawned on us that it is maybe not appropriate to go to a complicated tailored fabric upholstery, because there is a lot of labor involved and a lot of scrap that you end up with. So it's not really conducive to the idea of basic. And that brought us to 3D knitting, having really for organic shapes something that is created in the shape that you need, therefore is zero waste. And we and really decided to learn everything about knitting. And the other thing that we found out soon was you can even integrate the padding. So you don't have an extra foam, but it is part of the upholstery. And what we thought was also cool, that it is an engineered part that has, you can put all the features into the program, and then a highly intelligent part comes out of there. We soon learned that programming a knitting machine isn't that easy. Basically, you show pictures to the machine, which is not really helpful if you create an iterative process. So we created our own tool to program the knitting machine, and being able to really even do random patterns, but control them. And for some of the other patterns, like the splash, we needed even more control. So it was a very interesting, also thinking about all the specific challenges of knit. There are some details on knit that are really nasty that you have to cope with. And then also we thought, if we are able, or if we could think about an attachment method to attach that upholstery to the shell, that it's removable, that would be really cool. So we started this idea of what we call a traceless shell attachment, meaning that it's not an extra shell. There are no features in the shell. It is really, every shell can be transformed into an upholstered one. We had to learn a lot about knitting and everything during the pandemic on video conferences and parcels that went back and forth. Also about assembly processes to come up with cool and really workable assembly methods that then really create clean finished edges, which is not so easy on knit. But the cool thing about knitting is you can create patterns that reflect the geometry, and also we think that knit always has that warm artisanal character, which then results in this cozy casual padded layer that has that is lively and has character, and we really were happy that this was possible, and also in the end is really nice. So again, the shell is a regular shell that you can add with a seat pad. We found out that on the seat pad only you might expect a little bit more padding, so we added an additional cushioning pad underneath. But the same also goes on the arm shell, and you can also remove it, and the shell also works without any upholstery. And the process itself is really super quick, and so we think that also contributes to the fact that sustainability for us is also longevity. Longevity means both functional but also visual, and upholstery is the first thing that suffers from aging, and might be already not pristine anymore, whereas the shell and the rest of the chair is still perfect. So being able to change that, also if you move in a different space or redecorate, just changing that layer is really helping with having something that is more sustainable. And then the fun part started to think about the additional palette that comes with a textile layer. And we really like the idea that the shell is somewhat referencing back to this mid-century serenity at Herman Miller, and we wanted the pattern, the color combinations almost being like in a cheerful art, like the Girard color scheme. So we were happy that that was possible, and we were even more proud that this came through even at the end into the photography that is being used to show Zeph to the world. And if you start to learn something, it doesn't stop. So it's almost always fractal. And one thing was the yarns. We thought, okay, if we can go to recycled polyester yarns, that would be really cool. But better even if it's solution dyed, because that uses way less water. The problem is that then you have super limited color palette, because it is the extrusion already is colored, and so you can't have many colors, or you have to take truckloads of every color. So we referred to existing colors, and we just started. It was almost a back to school moment with visual color mixture that we tested. So we mixed 2 yarn colors of the existing ones to create a third color. And this creates these almost metameric colors that are, some of them are really neutral, but if you look closer, they start to come alive because they react to light in a very vivid way. So with this technique, we were able to really create our dipped in color corresponding fabric colors. And we also found a special yarn that has a rough hand, as we call it, that feels more like a wool, something between a wool and a cotton. That's the side that shows to the user. And for the back side, we went to a more technical yarn that is a little bit more shiny. And so we always had to create even 2 corresponding colors. But it was fun, and we got pretty good at it. And therefore, at the end, we had so many shades that we were able to create what we now call like a box of crayons. So it is an almost consistent palette that is in a way also responding to the fact that there are so many more places that you could introduce Zeph and where you can introduce therefore more ergonomic benefits, because in many of those places the visual design is very important, and sometimes the ergonomic benefits are sacrificed for the looks. And that's why we thought, okay, if we can provide a really wide range of colors, that should help to also transpire ergonomic seating or sitting into other areas as well. We are really happy that we have this broad palette of 20 colors, and we even went one step further, creating some peekaboo colors. So you can just have color on the back side, and the front has the color of the rest of the chair. Of course, there is still the classic way to have a contrast or also to go dipped in color. But I think it's now 360 plus different color combinations that you can come up with. Yeah, we think that it's important to try to make more with less. And so we always say EMC, every molecule counts. And the idea is really to reduce as much as we can. And the Zeph, the current Zeph is now 18.5 pounds in the arm version. The other one is even slightly less. And still it can hold a user up to 350 pounds. And the warranty is also 12 years. So for us, this idea of dematerialization is really important, and it goes very nicely in sync with being also more affordable and approachable. So we think Zeph is something like an aspirational experience, hopefully for our students, and still we hope that more people are introduced to a good sit, and some of them eventually will upgrade. And here you can see that they share a DNA because people's bodies are similar. So you see some of the shapes are speaking to each other, and it's just the youngest member of that family of chairs that we already did. So thank you for listening, and hopefully you have questions to Burkhard and myself.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Carola, for that. And as we mentioned at the beginning, we want to open it up to Q&A so we can have a designer-to-designer dialogue here. So use the chat feature and put your questions there. I will, we've got a couple questions in chat, but I will ask a question of my own. One thing that I think is interesting, your name, 7.5, right? So maybe you can explain to the audience where that very unusual name comes from.
Well, it actually comes from, at that time, at least, it was still in the German legislation that with a normal driver's license, you can drive a truck up to 7.5 tons. And I think they've changed that for good reasons, but that not everybody can do that. And when we moved to Berlin, we were pretty sure that we would not find it wouldn't be easy to find a home. So the truck idea was thought of our new office.
Yeah, it was the idea of a design ambulance. So going to the client and work there. Obviously, with Herman Miller, it would be more like a plane.
Yeah,
I love the reference to the design ambulance. So 7.5 was the law at the time.
The projected size of the studio.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
And it was also we started with 6 people, and we wouldn't want to have all the names in it. And that was just numbers seem to be appropriate.
And international, and yeah, you don't want to have a studio that is called Zwick Schmitz. Yeah,
Sure.
no. For us, it's also an invitation for other people that share the same MO. So it's not about us.
Right. Perfect. Well, thank you for that question. We've got a couple here in chat. There was one question which it looks like Pete Phillips has answered, and it was here was the question: with regards to the chair entering alternative environments, any plans for a softer, less technical base, for example, like a 4-leg wire or sled base? Pete does say that we're exploring some additional base options. Do you have anything that you would add, Carola or Burkhart?
I'm not sure whether Pete would slap me. So Pete should no.
Well, you're in Berlin and he's in the US, so I think you're safe.
Yeah, no, for us it is a family, and we are working on the extension with different materials. Let's put it this way.
Okay,
Well said.
wonderful.
No slap required. I love it. Thank you.
That's
Oh
fair.
yeah, shouldn't I? Yeah, all good. I don't go further. So no,
right.
we just have, I think, agreement that there should be several other bases that are not that technical, because we also want them in our home at a dining table, for example. Yeah. And therefore there will be alternative bases available.
Okay, I think that makes sense. And it was the first question, so it seems as though the audience is in agreement. Mm-hmm. There's another technical question here. What is the height range of the stool version? Is that something 7.5 wants to answer, or Pete? I know you're on the line. Pete's on the Herman Miller product team.
I could take that one. This is Susie.
Hi, Susie.
So the overall height range for the stool is 39 inches to 47 inches max.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, a question on the colors and materials. And by the way, I personally have to say, I think the color palette is extraordinary, especially the number of combinations you can get. And I like that peekaboo feature where one side can be dipped in color or solid, and then a hint of color on the backside. So I really love that. But the question is, what was the inspiration of the color selections?
Appetite.
No. For us, especially with this, we as we said, we like that we somehow got together these two branches of Herman Miller's expertise. That is mid-century classics and highly ergonomic work chairs. So somehow we brought these two extremes together in Zeph. And for us, this serenity of mid-century positive thinking about future meant that we really wanted to embrace color. And the question always is, how many colors can we get? Because It is a logistic nightmare. And so it's always wrangling what we can get. And obviously it should also speak to the overall color strategy with other products. And therefore, we maxed it out. Let's put it this way. And we also, maybe one specific thing, we thought, especially also if it goes into residential context, we skip the graphite for a true black. We think that is a color that is more residential, or also for hospitality, much more compatible and works more graphical than the classic graphite.
Perfect. The next question is about the name of the chair. Why is the chair called Zeph? Does it have a specific meaning?
It's a long story. So we never interfere with the naming, because naming is a nightmare. It doesn't work in all languages. So for us, contributing to naming led to pretty embarrassing proposals. don't go there. So I think the Herman Miller team came up with Zeph, and it was the idea about a fresh something that has that feels fresh.
It feels fresh.
That is the
So
connotation.
it has nothing. So it has nothing to do with traffic legislation in Berlin.
No.
Like the name of your
Oh.
studio.
No. So names is really we are really control freaks. We are interfering with everything. The only thing names we don't touch, because it's more about legal
Sure.
things and trademarkable things.
Things of that nature.
We keep to designing the product.
And Alan, I can jump in on the name. I think one of
Sure.
the things that we try and partner with Studio 7.5 is a larger sense of the family, and so we really want to connect a lot of the names in terms of just ideas of where Mirra and Cosm and Zeph kind of comes in. So there's definitely familial kind of inspiration behind the names in terms of connecting to broader things and giving a hint to where it is. And so if you look at like Cosm kind of comes from cosmos, and some of the chair can fit across everywhere. And that was kind of the wordplay that got to Cosm. For Zeph, it was really kind of pulling from Zephyr. And I think the thing that really resonated with us was really that wonderful part of the chair and every molecule counts in terms of being light, but also strong. And that was really the connotation of where that really kind of came from.
Okay,
and
that
really
makes
pulled
sense.
from there. And then I think the other part to this, right, is obviously we want to make sure it connects and feels with where it is. And then obviously to what Corolla said is like there is that legal part behind it too that we all have to make sure it gets through. That was the other consideration with it.
Okay, perfect. So the next question is really about something of the design process in your studio. So Linda says, enjoyed hearing about the process. Just curious, how many people were involved in the design process start to finish?
6, 7.
We're around 7, 8 people.
7.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those were all from your studio in Berlin, or did those include any collaborators with Herman Miller?
So I think it was a particular situation because the heavy lifting took place during the pandemic. So and also we had the smallest team on the Herman Miller side ever. So we did a lot of the prototyping and even provided Herman Miller with prototyping, because at times it was easier to work here in the studio where everything was restricted in the US. So we are basically trying to do everything here because we don't outsource the learning. For us, we need to touch it, we need to experience it, and so it's a tight-knit team. There are always people coming, joining the team, and people leaving the team. But on average, we just will celebrate with Kerstin, our graphic designer. She's also our photographer and our model on most of the chairs. She will be with us 20 years. So it is a little bit like a family.
All right, perfect.
And maybe one anecdote: we do have a chef in the studio, and Katja, our chef. She said, she always says she will quit if we are getting more than 12 people.
I see.
So we are never more than 12, including interns. We make sure that this never happens.
You'd have to get a larger table for lunch or dinner, right? Or a bigger kitchen. Okay, here's a question from Kai. Are there any larger seat and arm widths planned for the future? The weight limit is great, however, the width needs to correspond. And then he did add on if, that was perhaps the land of broken dreams. So any comments on a wider chair?
Yeah, so we think that the size is pretty deceiving. It looks very compact because it's a 3-dimensional shell, and it is actually quite wide if you sit in it. So it is not a small chair, it just looks small.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. I'm scrolling here. I had a question that I was looking at. So, question around what is prefaced with an apology if they missed this, but what is the makeup of the shell, and are there any fibers in it? If so, how does this affect recycling?
Well, there are no fibers in it. It's polypropylene.
Yeah, there is a glass content in,
Yes,
but that
but
is typical.
super
Yeah, that
min-
is. Yeah.
And super minimal.
Yeah, and that's typical for polypro. So it's the, as we always say, the most proletarian plastic you can come up with. Like the Setu beams, we really like the most common used plastic and not something fancy.
Exotic.
Yeah, polypropylene is known since the 60s of the last century, and therefore in great quantities and recyclable.
Perfect. And one final question around availability of the chair. I know the chair was launched in the United States or North America just recently. We have some specifiers on the call who work for global design firms and with global clients. Can you speak to the availability of Zeph, Europe, Asia, Australia, other parts of the world?
I think that would be a question for Pete.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I was reading another question and getting ready to type and I missed that question. So
Availability globally.
Yes.
yeah, and Susie, jump in here. I believe we are on the task chair, the 5-star base, globally synced up and available, both contract and consumer.
Correct.
And
Yep.
if you could speak to the stool
Yep.
specifically.
The stool just went live last Friday. So in North America, so we're good to go there in North America and in Latin America. The stool is also available in the APMEA region right now. And then it will be going live in Europe on October 4th. Sorry, October 4th.
Wonderful. One more question popped in on the design process. So when you think about the process of designing Zeph, what was your favorite part, or what were the most exciting discoveries? And you might each have a different answer to that question.
Well, I think the most exciting discovery was that it was actually possible to make something that is so three-dimensional and still pliable. Because usually that actually are things that exclude each other. Because the more three-dimensional curved an object is, the stiffer it is. And that's actually why those two holes are in the Zeph shell. We took away
the structural part.
Well, all the parts that made it stiff, but you can still see the whole three-dimensional shell.
Try to make us sharp again.
Perfect. Another question popped in. Have you added back to position mechanism / gas lift?
Back to position, what do you mean by that?
Not sure.
I might understand. So the reclining motion is counterbalanced by your own weight. So it is a teeter-totter mechanism essentially. So when you shift your weight, you get upright again. So it is not that you got stuck reclined and have to somehow maneuver yourself up again. So there's a constant counter force balancing you, and it is a constant motion that is balanced.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, here's a follow-up to it. No, it's about the revolving movement I am asking.
Revolving.
Is that?
So the spinning,
Oh, I think that may be the question. So it is, just to clarify, it's a pneumatic lift on the chair,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Versus a manual spinning.
Yeah, aha, sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, it's
Okay,
not,
that,
you don't
Yeah,
buy
that's my
it and it
understanding
won't
of the
stop
question.
spinning,
No.
like the one that you see.
Yeah, no, it has
So-
a regular gas lift up
Yeah.
and down
Yeah.
and the possibility to spin, yeah.
You put the foot to the floor and it stops.
Yeah.
yeah.
Now you
Okay.
can see that if I go back on the here. So it's a regular
It's a gas
lift.
pneumatic lift, correct? No
If you-
spinning required.
Yeah, so I think this is the only vanity piece that we have. The rest is all structural. This is a little cover to camouflage or hide the gas
Yes,
lift.
but even that makes sense because in the version of the stool, it is replaced by the system
functional.
that is actually functional that gives you the defined stops for the dish, for the foot dish, so to speak.
Mhm.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's it for the Q&A. Again, would like to thank both Carola and Burkhart from joining us from Berlin. We're probably keeping you from dinner at this point, so
All good.
we certainly enjoy seeing another phenomenal design from your studio, and we thank you again for sharing with us. For the audience, we encourage you to join us in October for Design Perspectives, and we have a conversation with Knoll designer Ini Archibong, and so that I believe is October 13th. So please look for the invitation in your inbox. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.